So Brian Anderson, the March Home, and I'm really excited to be here with my friend Myrna. Myrna just did a presentation on, what was her presentation title?
It was the challenges and benefits of integrating art into the VA system.
And now she talked about a lot of things during the presentation, and I felt like she was almost talking directly about me because she was hitting on some key points that I think us as combat veterans and warriors dealing with transition and dealing with PTSD kind of deal with. You see Heroes already up and at him because both of us are probably a little bit nervous going through the video, but it's fun. He always hints towards those things. That's what makes him such a great dog. So the first one is effects on focus and concentration. I saw this because I know I face this all the time. It's one of the difficulties that I have. And did I skip one slide? I did skip this slide. We can go back to this one in just a second. Let's go with the effects of concentration. So, Heroes now making himself comfortable. So the effects of concentration. Tell me a little bit more about that. What do you see from some of the warriors that you know are dealing with combat-related issues coming home from the military or just reintegrating as a civilian force?
So part of what we see is that disruption in the ability to focus, concentrate, complete a task. And the reason for that is when your brain is under traumatic stress, it operates functionally differently than under any other type of stress even, or just under normal circumstances. So in trauma, your brain is dysregulated. So you've got a high emotional content going on, and it actually blunts your higher executive functioning. So your cognitive skills for planning, executing the plan, following through, doing those things it's a function of the brain. Your brain is still very highly emotional at that point, so it makes it very hard to think your way clear. So that's one of the reasons why focus is impaired, concentration is impaired, task management, being able to do your job.
So let me ask you, with all these things impaired, and I imagine that this isn't always a consistent, is it up and down? Is that kind of what you see? So what are some of the things that you have done to help guys out through when they start coming onto that effects of concentration or staying focused on the task? What are some of the things that you've done to help warriors out with that?
Well, besides doing the full accelerated resolution therapy sessions that helps greatly reduce that squirrel effect, I teach them a 30-30-30 technique, and it's basically for self-regulation and self-management to lower that emotional response and to heighten the cognitive skills so your brain gets more balanced again as opposed to being dysregulated.
So it sounded like when I hear 30-30-30, it sounds like it's probably about to be an easy lesson. What is 30-30-30? And if someone's going through this process where they're having a conversation, all of a sudden they're thinking about, hey, do you want to go for ice cream? So what is this 30-30-30? How can this help them out? And can you explain it briefly where someone can actually pick up this practice?
I teach this routinely, individually and in groups, and so it works very well. The 30-30-30 technique is simply eye movement for relaxation. So it's a relaxation technique that anybody can do. I teach it in a variety of ways. The easiest for smooth pursuit is to put your hand about 6 inches in front of your face and move your hand. It doesn't have to be wide, just from here to here, your range of vision. You need your eyes to cross the plane of your nose, the bridge of your nose, and move at about this pace. So you're doing this for self-management. 30 seconds worth, of eye movements, just moving your eyes, keeping your head still and moving your eyes. At the end of 30 seconds, as you've just been noticing sensation, all those physical and emotional sensations churned up in your body, you're going to stop after 30 seconds of eye movements, take that deep breath that Brian just did, and then just check in. Has anything moved or changed? If my heart rate was rapidly beating, has it slowed down at all? If my stomach was churning, is it a little bit calmer? Is that buzzing energy, those racing thoughts, has any of that calmed down?
You know what's great about this? I gotta tell you real quick. First of all, I like the hand movement because I'm a big fan of accelerated resolution therapy. I think it's a great practice, and I think anybody should go through it. Now, when I see this right here, the one thing I'm thinking of is John Cena. You can't see me. Maybe you want to do this in a place where you don't have a bunch of people looking at you, but it is a really good practice. You're doing it for 30 seconds, you're doing a hand movement right in front of your face, but you're not just doing this, you're watching your hand, right? You're keeping your eyes on your hand, and you're keeping your head still. So you're watching your hand go left, watching it go right, and you're doing that for 30 seconds. You take a deep breath, you notice any kind of changes that you might have. So if you were feeling like, man, I'm about to just attack something has to happen, you see if that reduces, and then you do it again for another 30 seconds.
So after 30 seconds in that check-in, am I still all pumped up? Am I irritated, angry? Has that sensation calmed down? Like, I'm no longer clenching my fists, my hands are more relaxed. What is it? Then you do the eye movements again for 30 seconds, just tracking. Your comment before about, don't do that in public. You can find a bathroom stall, you can find somewhere else, but in the immediate, you can also just close your eyes and move them. I've told my guys, if they're sitting in the waiting room.
Just so you know, we're in a big auditorium, so people open up the doors and close them, but that's just background noise.
So, they can put their sunglasses on, or literally just tuck their head and close their eyes and move their eyes. So you can pretty much do it anywhere. I've had guys sitting in the waiting room do it. I've had women go to court and have stepped aside in the corner to do it. I've had people tell me that they went behind an outhouse and did it there. Wherever you have to do it, just do it. So it's that 30 seconds of eye movements, check in. Another 30 seconds of eye movements and check in. And then one more round of eye movements. Typically in that minute and a half of eye movements, all those sensations calm down in your body and you are back in that seat of control again. So your brain is functioning, you're out of the irrational mindset and into your rational mind. You just think clearer and make better decisions in that non-emotional mindset.
So this is really cool. This is a practice that you can utilize. And honestly, guys, if you start noticing, hey, I'm having to use this a bunch, this is when you start noticing that, maybe you need to go in and see somebody to help you overall calm down whatever's leading to you constantly getting into that hypervigilant state. I like the 30-30-30 thing. That's a really cool process that you have. Let's continue on. I went to this slide right here. During the presentation, you talked about the emotional coding and trauma. A lot of people, they talk about this. They talk about the fight, flight, or freeze. You see something and you automatically want to react to it, whether you're going to attack it, whether you're going to run, whether you're going to do something. Here's the thing about some of you warriors. You're smart, you're creative, and you know how to plan. So sometimes when you see a threat, and this is the one piece that I would think of, sometimes when you see a threat, maybe your reaction isn't right away. And it's not that you're freezing, it's that you are reacting, but you're seeing it and you're like, okay, what's the best way to approach this? Because something that can be scary, maybe it is a snake, like the one up here. Maybe it is a snake. Maybe the best way for you to deal with it is to leave it alone, or maybe the best way for you to deal with it is to decide that that's going to be your lunch. So it just takes a couple of minutes to figure out, what is it going to take for me to make this my lunch? Do I have a stick and the appropriate tools to go after the snake? Or is this snake really helpful in my yard because it's just a black racer? That's kind of a good thing to kind of figure out. And so don't always think, when we go through a slide like this, that fight, flight, or freeze, because I always hear it. I always get nervous.
There's that pause.
There's a process that guys go through, and the more that they're, in that planning thought process, the more they kind of put towards that. It's not a reactive thing right away, and sometimes it's hard to even put those in words.
Right, and there's some things that are imminent threat where your brain does take in all that information that it needs for safety, and it does help you react immediately.
Yep.
And there's other situations where you do need to pause and do that quick assessment so that you plan your best course of action. So, it may not, there's 4 doors in here, those 3 doors may not be the safest exit. My brain is going to take that pause to evaluate, and then I'm going to get the hell out of Dodge.
And so maybe that right there is a snake is one thought process, but if someone's telling you this, you go in your own mind and you think about it. What is a reaction to an explosion going off inside this room? How would you react to that? Maybe that's really where you bring your mind a little bit further because you've gone through such extreme things that a therapist doesn't have the imagination to bring it to the same level of extreme that you're used to. Am I right? Is that a good way to kind of say it?
I have a really good imagination, so I don't know.
This girl, she had to keep it PG for the group that we had here.
Exactly.
So this is really interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the traumatic effects in the brain. So you have the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. And I see all the color and creativity here on the right side, and I see the numbers and analytics on the left side. How does PTSD affect the brain on these both sides?
And that's a pretty simplification because your brain is very, very complex and there's lots of things that take place over the course of both sides. So here you get a lot more blood flow on the right side in trauma or under threat. So that, again, that emotional content gets very, very high. Executive functionings tend to shut down. And the reason for that is because your body is preparing you for safety. So it's gonna, you're not gonna sit there, we talked about just a minute ago, you're not gonna sit there and ponder, well, what's my plan gonna be? You're not gonna sit there and take an hour to plan if the threat is right now. Your brain is saying, shut down all those higher cognitive functionings, all that, I'm gonna plan and figure it all out, and it's gonna get you the hell out of Dodge. It's going to have you freeze so that maybe the threat's gonna pass you by, or you're gonna boogie because that is the safest course of action. If somebody throws, a grenade in here, I'm not gonna pause and say, well, now what should I be doing? I'm going to, duck and head for cover, so.
And then when you're applying this to a longevity of someone, not an instantaneous moment, but you're looking at someone over a long period of time, I know this is something that I kind of struggle with because the next slide is I'm late executive functioning. I run a great organization, there's a lot of planning that goes behind, but I also understand that it's because I have a great team that can help orchestrate some of the things that need to be done. And I usually end up staying as much as I can to the creative side, and then it's an extra task, and it makes more work for me to go towards the executive or analytical side. And so those pieces right there are harder to deal with sometimes when you're dealing with the emotional states of, going through post-traumatic stress.
So you want to stay creative, you want to stay right-brained. However, you do want to do the 30-30.
Hi, my name is Rod Wortham, founder of RaceFace, and it's my privilege to be able to make the announcement that RaceFace University is going to start pre-enrollment on June the 15th with classes starting on July 1st. It's an 8-week semester. You're not going to want to miss this. And here's what you're going to get. You're going to learn how to be a presenter to your sponsors. You're going to learn how to talk, how to walk, all with our online course. It's very, very affordable for only $299, and you're going to have access to some of the top people in the industry, including NASCAR developer Mr. Lauren Ranier and driver coach Mr. Tom Baker. This is something that you're not going to want to miss. Again, classes start July 1st with pre-enrollment on June the 15th, all at racefaceuniversity.com. Don't miss out. Get registered now.
All right, welcome back to the March Home. So I had Myrna on last, I have Diego next to me this time. I can tell you that the two of them are the fault of a migraine that started to come up during their presentations, mainly because I thought they were talking about me. They were talking about things that I go through on a regular basis as someone who deals with the struggles coming home from war. And it was interesting to hear this from their perspective, and I wanted to kind of touch a little bit more on it because I know there's some of the warriors out there that want to hear a little bit different version of their history and what's going on. It's just a perspective to look at. So I want to start with Tribe. Tribe is something that you brought up during your presentation, and you brought it up in two senses. Obviously, our combat units are very close to one another. You talked especially about Green Berets, but I can tell you this relates to a lot of our special operators and a lot of our infantry guys that work closely, tight-knit with one another. How did you kind of come up, or what did you kind of put into that? What were you thinking through when you were talking about that tribe portion?
Well, part of it, I mean, when you think about the, the military in general as a minority group or a unique group that has its own culture, its own language, its own shared experiences, and then when you start getting to operators, it tightens up, tightens up, tightens up, and our bodies are designed under those circumstances to actually form tighter bonds, to actually in order to function together.
So this is probably why there's so many guys who want to be back deployed when they've been home.
Yeah.
Like, well, they're always wanting to be there, and then when they come home, they're like,
mission, you got a job, you got a purpose, you know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it. Here, you've got to figure those things out yourself.
so that makes it even more important for guys to reach out instead of staying inside a silo, kind of reach out to a team atmosphere, to be around other guys, maybe share similar experiences, for them to have a community around them, I would guess, right?
Absolutely. And so I can tell you one thing that one of the guys in one of our retreats with Warrior Mission, he said, everything that we did on deployment, we did together. Everything that we did in combat, we did together. Who do you think you are to think that you could do this on your own?
I can tell you, it's a hard place to be when you're thinking through, like, do I want to share my crazy with the rest of the world? That's a sucky place to be at. But it's not really the rest of the world, because you talk with your peers, you're like, wow, they're just as crazy and nuts as I am. Maybe this makes sense that we go through these processes coming home after combat.
And it feels like home to me.
One of those processes. So I'm going to skip a couple of slides here. Sebastian Unger, Tribe, that's a great book. Guys, if you haven't read it, I would definitely take a look at this book. It tells a really good story. He's the one that went out and did Restrepo, and there's a lot of great information in there. And I think a lot of our therapists and psychologists actually look at this when they're treating our warriors, am I right?
Yeah. And if not, they need to.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that 100%. All right, so model of U.S. Special Forces, Green Berets. Contrary to a lot of people's beliefs, Special Forces is one group of folks, that's Green Berets. The rest is Special Operations Community. You've got Navy SEALs, you've got Army Rangers. We have improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I like what you kind of put together here, improvise, adapt, and overcome, for tools guys can use. So can you talk a little bit more about this?
Well, a big part of it is when you think in terms of your MOS and what you were trained for. You were trained to do a specific job. And then there's some cross-training, and you might make a transition from one spot to another. But you're trained, and you're trained, and you're trained. But then you find yourself in the battlefield, and all of a sudden you've got to use what's available.
MOS is that military occupation, what you do for a career.
Yeah, what your job is.
Yeah, okay.
And then you find yourself in a situation where you've got to use what's available. I mean, you may have read the story about the guy who used his spork to take someone out. It's like, if that's all you got that's available, you've got to make use of what's available.
If you don't know what a spork is, maybe you need to go camping a little bit more. It's that nice spoon with little fork pieces on the end. So you can eat Cheerios with it, but you might be able to also use it to hold down a steak while you cut it.
Right, or hold on somebody else while you get the job done.
That's part of life. So adapt and overcome. That's some things that we try and do. Improvise, adapt, and overcome. When you see someone going through a situation, how do they, like, if you've worked with a Green Beret, can you give a brief example of how they use improvise, adapt, and overcome for life situations that they're dealing with outside of war, here in the civilian world?
Well, one of the things we spent a lot of time talking about is actually your existing skill set and how to translate it. So, I mean, that's one way to adapt, is to take what you know and apply it to where you are. And that is part of that adaptation. And that can allow you to, accomplish new things because you know what you've accomplished in the service. You know what you're capable of in that environment. And it's being able to translate that to this new environment.
Do you also use this 30-30-30 thing? Is that something that you do? Like Myrna last segment, she talked about 30-30-30, the breathing to kind of calm down. Do you ever, when you work with clients, do you ever point them in directions like that, tools that they can use?
Yeah, I mean, in some of the same ways, basically what you're trying to do is to have an appropriate level of physiological response to the situation. So if your response is greater than the situation demands, it's like the difference between vigilant. Vigilant, you can focus in, select your target, come back out, look for the next target. And you're hyper-vigilant, you don't have a target. You're just looking around. You're just trying to figure out, and then you're prone to get triggered because you don't know where the danger is. So if you know that you're functioning at that level, it's not productive, and you've got to be able to bring it down. So we spent a lot of time talking individually about that in certain circumstances and really kind of tune in. Think about it in terms of tactical breathing. If, if you're able to manage your body to become more accurate with your weapon, why can't you manage your own body to become accurate in social situations and work situations where something frustrates you? I mean, we've all got shit to deal with, and that's just kind of part of life.
Getting in tune, and that's one of the things that I think I have to work a little bit harder at sometimes is socialization.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about that a little
Right.
bit. The work that you have to do to be able to fit in and acclimate to the world around you. It's not the same as Afghanistan. Afghanistan is always dealing with life and death.
Right.
But in the real world, I guess you would call it, it's a lot more convoluted.
Yeah.
It's more difficult to kind of navigate. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I mean, the more highly urban environment you are, you have all these different groups in which you're functioning. Different groups have different roles. Think about it in terms of like music. Some people listen to country music, some people listen to heavy metal. Stuff like that. It's like there's all these different cultural aspects of it.
Or coral reefs. You got 1,000 coral reefs out there.
Yeah, exactly. And so whatever your goals are, whatever environment you find yourself in, you got to go meet it. You got to learn about that culture. You got to learn about that environment. You got to learn how to operate according to the rules of that culture to meet your goals and what your objectives are. And then you get to pick and choose what you're going to adapt and what you're going to keep from that culture. Just like you brought things from military culture and even from the places in which you've been deployed.
You know what sucks is we just don't get that intel brief, and there's not a National Geographic magazine telling you what that site actually looks like when you enter it, because it's culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a completely different culture. So I'm going to skip through. Oh, I love this. So Diego's not a Green Beret. He's not from the Special Operations community, but he serves a lot of our brothers and sisters, not only from the Special Operations community, but all across the military. So he asked the question, what have I learned from working with Green Berets? And Diego's an extremely smart man. You sit down and have a conversation with you. I mean, you can touch a ton of topics, and you have some expertise or you have some knowledge, good knowledge on each one of these. But when it comes to Green Berets and he starts having this conversation, he ends up with I don't know shit. I love that because we do take ownership of the room, and if you haven't been inside those experiences and you try and claim those experiences, it's hard for us to relate. That's one thing that I've noticed. So how have you adapted to not having the experiences, but still being able to provide accurate, which a lot of clinicians, that's what, how many clinicians are Green Berets? I know of one.
Yeah, just a handful.
A small group. So how do you overcome those things? How are you able to work with someone who's had these high-level experiences in combat, not just Green Berets, but other warriors who've spent those days, those nights, those months in the trenches? How do you relate to them? How are you able to provide services for them?
Well, like you said, you start off by doing your SEALs. You have to orient yourself to every new environment in which you're in. And I work with people in a variety of different environments, but every time I meet someone and work with them, and this slide was for the therapists who are at the presentation, and say, I don't know shit, but I can learn. It's by spending time with individuals and listening and being open and be available, because I have a skill set. When it comes to treatment, it's like I'm a professional. I love what I do. I love getting in there. I love digging deep and getting things done too. But I can't walk into the situation assuming that I know everything. And too many people do. And especially when they're coming from the perspective of looking at illness. Calling everything mental illness. And
yeah, I cut you off. If you're a therapist and you tell me I have a mental illness, I cut you off. I know what I go through. I know what the struggles are. But getting accused of something makes it so much more difficult. It makes it so hard. I actually talked to one warrior who said his therapist told him he was a sociopath. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to get very far telling your client something like that. This is really what I liked about that when you were talking about the professionalism. You said be a professional. Mm-hmm. And we know that we expect professionalism from everybody that provides us intel, does our drops for us. We expect them to do what they're supposed to do because that's their role. And it's their role because it's not ours. We have our own separate role of things that we have to take care of. So you take ownership. And can you kind of explain that a little bit more as a therapist, how you take ownership of what you do to help serve the men and women, who are struggling with some of the things that they had to do.
Just like I was saying a moment ago, digging deep, connect deeply, stand shoulder to shoulder. It's like when we start working on something, nothing else might matter. My life matters. My family doesn't matter. My bladder doesn't matter. Whether I'm eating or not doesn't matter. It's like you dig in and you hang in for the moment because that's how those experiences got formed.
Yeah.
And you know, you need that. You're the director of what's taking place, and we're producer. We provide some intel. We do some other things too to help guide you through that process.
I like that analogy because I'm directing, I'm a driver, right? And you're the tank commander. You're actually giving me, you're watching the Blue Force tractor and telling me, hey, you need to take a left here, you need to take a right there. So it's a set protocol of how we kind of work together.
Absolutely.
You know, something else that you kind of said there too is digging deep and getting in relationship with the person that's there. Almost like you're taking on a team member's role for them to get through that trauma.